Hi everyone, this is Dr. Saiti, Team MDS Conquer. So, we are going to have a quick revision of your physiology and general medicine, and the discussion will be system wise, wherein physiology followed by general medicine in every system will be discussed, all the important points. Okay, and the discussion will be little quick so as to save your time. So, coming to the first system being the endocrine system. So, here these are the hormones which are being secreted by the respective endocrine glands. So, they are quite important because in your exam they can ask oxytocin is being secreted by which gland, and you have to go for posterior pituitary. Okay, so like that questions can be asked. So, do note all the hormones secreted by the respective endocrine glands, and even the hormones secreted by the other organs are quite important. You must be knowing the hormones by the endocrine glands, but the other organs are again important. So, note this as well. Okay. Next, this is a flow chart giving the vitamin D metabolism, which is again important for calcium metabolism, right. So, here if you see, these are the series of reactions that occur. So, the conversions where exactly the organs, okay, the respective organs are quite important. Okay, they can ask where exactly this reaction occur, then you have to go for the respective organ. So, do note this as well, it is quite simple to understand. So, just note it down. Next, quite important is again the differences between the insulin and glucagon. So, these are the list of differences between the insulin and glucagon. So, note them as well. Next, the adrenal glands. So, in adrenal glands many times they have asked the zones and the respective or hormones which are being secreted by those zones. Okay, zona glomerulosa secretes mineral corticoids, zona fasciculata secretes glucocorticoids. Okay, so zona glomerulosa GM secretes mineral corticoids, zona fasciculata secretes glucocorticoids FZ. Okay, so many times they have asked this, so note this as well. Next, again important is the HPA axis. So, why this is important? Because it has a clinical significance, because when we prescribe corticosteroids on a later stage we have to give an alternate day dose. If alternate day dose is not given, then there will be no natural stimulation of the steroids by the human body, because of which they can lead to HPA axis suppression that leads to adrenal crisis. So, that is the reason HPA axis it's very important in your physiology. So, note this as well. And these are the various actions of the glucocorticoids. So, glucocorticoids is important for protein catabolism, increases gluconeogenesis. That is the reason in Cushing syndrome there will be hyperglycemia, right, and it inhibits the inflammatory and immune responses. So, that is the reason it is given as the corticosteroids are again given as anti-inflammatory drugs. So, these are the various actions of the glucocorticoids which are again quite important. Okay. So, now coming to the medicine point of view, many times important aspect is the differences between the hypo and hypothyroidism, which you need to know. So, hyperthyroidism, intolerance to cold, bulging of eyes, tachycardia, enlarged thyroid, all these are the important features of the hyperthyroidism, whereas hypo they are intolerance to cold, hyperthyroidism intolerance to heat, okay, hypothyroidism intolerance to cold. So, in kids it is called as cretinism in children. So, they can post a picture of a cretin child showing macroglossia and they can give you the symptoms like intolerance to cold, then you have to go for hypothyroidism. Hyperthyroidism, intolerance to heat, exophthalmosis and tachycardia, all these are the other important symptoms of hyperthyroidism. And Graves disease, the various signs which are being exhibited by the Graves disease patient are again quite important. Okay, so note this out. And again the differences between the Addison's and the Cushing syndrome. So, Cushing syndrome, there will be hyperglycemia, there will be moon phase, buffalo hump, abdominal striae, petechiae, bruces, delayed healing, osteoporosis. So, all these are the very important features of the Cushing syndrome. Little opposite is the Addison's disease, wherein there will be bronze pigmentation of the skin, GI disturbances, hypoglycemia, postural hypotension, okay, weight loss, all these are the features of the Addison's disease. So, Cushing syndrome, increased secretions or like of glucocorticoids, okay, it is hyperadenocorticism, whereas Addison's disease is hypo, right. So, very important again from your endocrine. So, this is regarding the endocrine. Next, let us go to the heart or the CVS. So, very important areas is the first, second, third and fourth heart sounds. So, first heart sound, the lub is closure of AV valves and second is the closure of semi-lunar valves. Okay. And what are the 5 areas where we listen to the heartbeat is the like aortic, pulmonic, ERPs, point tricuspid and mitral. So, this is a mnemonic for that, again quite important. And very important is the circulation of the heart. So, wherein the right atrium receives the deoxygenated blood from the vena cava, and that goes to the right ventricle, and via pulmonary artery it reaches the lungs. That is the deoxygenated blood from the other parts of the body, from the vena cava, from the right ventricle, and then to the pulmonary artery. So, only artery in the body which carries deoxygenated blood is the pulmonary artery. Then via pulmonary vein, oxygenated blood is being carried to the left atrium, which is again carried to the left ventricle, and via systemic aorta is carried to the other parts of the body. So, the only vein in the human body which carries oxygenated blood is a pulmonary vein. Okay. So, this circulation of the heart is quite important, and these are the various phases of the cardiac cycle. So, just have a look of this. And now if you see why the circulation of heart is important is, if there is a right heart failure, so obviously it can't receive the blood from the vena cava. So, there is congestion in the peripheral tissues which causes the GI congestion, edema, dependent edema and liver congestion, right. So, if there is a left heart failure, obviously there will be pulmonary congestion and there will be related pulmonary symptoms like orthopnea, cough with frothy symptoms, and paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. Okay, and also there will be decreased cardiac output. So, these are the major differences between the right and the left heart failure, which is quite important. Okay. So, as per the physiology point of view, wherever you see the calculations and wherever you see the derivations, okay, those areas are again quite important. Okay. So, if you see the cardiac output is heart rate into stroke volume. Okay. So, all the derivations or the formulas or the calculations wherever you see, those are quite attractive. So, physiology, just have a look of all those. Okay. So, factors affecting the heart rate and factors affecting the stroke volume. Okay. So, quite important. So, note them out. Next, the action potential in the cardiac muscle. So, what exactly the action potential differs from that of the skeletal muscle is, in skeletal muscle, so there will be a first depolarization because of the influx of the sodium ions, and finally there will be repolarization because of the efflux or because of the outgoing of the potassium ions, right. But in cardiac muscle, the difference is there is a plateau because of the entry of the calcium. Okay. So, that is a major difference. So, it is quite important again, action potential of the cardiac muscle versus skeletal muscle, and this is again quite important area, though the phases. Okay. So, what the phase 0 denotes, what the phase 1 denote, what the 2, 3 denotes. So, many times I have asked this. So, note this as well. Okay. So, the cardiac muscle, the smooth muscle and skeletal muscle and the neuromuscular junction. So, these are the very important areas for the physiology. So, many times I have concentrated in this area. So, again have a look and again just give a glance to those areas. Okay. So, next important is the ECG, the waves, how they appear in the ECG. So, I think you are well aware of the concept. So, why there is a P wave? Because of depolarization in the atria, there is influx of the sodium ions and there is a positive vector towards a positive electrode. So, that is the reason there is a P wave, followed by the QRS complex. Okay. So, this is ventricular depolarization, wherein there is influx of the sodium ions and depolarization of the bundle of His and all that in the ventricles. So, again there is a positive deflection. So, that is a QRS complex. Okay. So, there is a delay in the AV node, slow conduction, very slow conduction in the AV node. Okay. And now there is a T wave because that denotes ventricular repolarization. Okay. So, that is a negative vector towards a negative electrode. So, that gives a ventricular repolarization. So, these are the very important areas that many times they have asked. So, note this. Okay. So, this is being the sinus rhythm. So, this the sinus rhythm wherein you can see all the waves and there will be like symmetrical. Okay. So, between the peaks there will be usually 4 large boxes. So, that you have to divide 300 by 4, which gives you the heart rate. So, 75, which is normal. Right. So, if there are less number of boxes, the large boxes, if there are only 2 boxes for example, then you have to divide 300 by 2, that is 150. So, it gives tachycardia, right? If there are more number of boxes, for example, if there are 6 boxes between the peaks, then 300 by 6 is 50. So, which is nothing but bradycardia. Okay, so even like that questions can be asked. So, note that. Next, very important areas is the disturbances in the rhythm, that is again the atrial flutter and fibrillation. So, flutter, there will be sawtooth like pattern waves, okay, whereas fibrillation there will be no P waves and it is completely irregularly irregular. Flutter irregularly regular, but atrial fibrillation it is irregularly irregular. Okay, so that is very important. So, note this, even last time they have asked one ECG regarding these two, so quite important. Okay. Next, coming to the GIT. Other ECGs are also quite important. If you have time, just have a look regarding the ventricular fibrillation, the asystole, as well as the STEMI. Okay, so ST elevated MI and all that. So, even those areas are quite important. Prolonged QT interval. So, these 4 areas, again if you have light time, just have a look. I think you must have covered all these ECGs in your mock exam as well. So, just give a look to them. Okay, so next is the GIT. So, this is a stomach wherein you have to have a look of the parts. So, it is fundus followed by body followed by antrum and pylorus. So, they can ask the sequence of fundus, body, antrum and pylorus. So, next the glands, the gastric glands. So, wherein the cells secrete and the respective secretions of the cells. So, gastric cells, the mucous necklace secretes mucus, surface epithelial cells again secrete mucus, chief cell secretes pepsinogen, G cell secrete gastrin, parietal cell secretes HCl and enterochromaffin like cells secrete histamine. Okay, so, these are the important again. So, next the phases of digestion, that is cephalic, gastric and the intestinal phase. So, cephalic phase, even the thought of food has secretes the gastrin or the gastric acid. Okay. So, whereas in the gastric phase it is a major phase where the gastric acid is being secreted. So, here if you see the decreasing order, the amount of HCl that is being secreted in each phase is gastric phase followed by cephalic followed by the intestinal. Okay. So, next is a gastric emptying, so which is propulsion followed by grinding and retropulsion. So, first there will be propulsion. So, bolus will be pushed towards the closed pylorus, then there will be grinding and churning movement, and finally, there will be retropulsion. So, bolus will be again pushed back to the stomach to undergo further grinding. Okay. So, this is the gastric emptying. So, you can see how the propulsion and retropulsion. So, propulsion is by blue marking and the retropulsion is by the red. So, what are the factors that delay the gastric emptying? So, all these could be the factors that delay the gastric emptying if the question is asked. Then the Brunner glands again, so this is present in the submucosa of the duodenum. Many times they have asked, and it is alkaline in nature in order to neutralize the acid. So, Brunner glands are located in the duodenum. Again important is the vitamin D B12 deficiency, the megaloblastic and pernicious anemia, very important. So, what are the causes of the B12 deficiency? So, it could be inadequate intake, it could be malabsorption or it could be defective transport, and if it is because of lack of intrinsic factor or the parietal cell, that is again a pernicious anemia. So, very important area. So, note this as well. Okay, so, the megaloblastic anemia also and the differences between the megaloblastic and pernicious anemia, very important. Okay, so, note this as well. Next, coming to the peptic ulcer. So, these are the various symptoms which are being exhibited by the patient with peptic ulcer, and very important is the differences between the gastric and the duodenal ulcer. Okay, so, for example, question can be asked, the pain patient was having pain before food intake and the pain got reduced after taking the food, then you have to go for duodenal ulcer, and weight gain occurs with duodenal ulcer. So, very important, note the differences, and these are the complications of the GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disease. So, here if you see, it can cause esophagitis, it can cause stricture, it can cause hemorrhage, and also it can cause a pre-malignant condition like a Barrett's esophagitis. So, very important. And the next, the syndrome which is associated with the GIT is a Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. So, the symptoms quite important, and there could be a tumor which could be a gastric secreting tumor or a tumor in the pancreatic head. So, that can lead to the gastrointestinal symptoms. So, this is an important syndrome with GIT. And again, the differences between the Crohn's and the ulcerative colitis, which is inflammatory bowel disease. So, Crohn's disease mainly it shows skip lesions. Okay, so that is a major important point related to Crohn's disease, and it also shows scissative necrosis and it is slightly granulomatous. So, Crohn's disease is quite important again, and just have a look of the other differences as well. So, that is regarding the GIT. Next, we will enter to the respiratory. So, very important from the physiology aspect is the lung capacities and the volumes. Okay, so the definitions, the derivatives and the formulas and the values are very important. So, note each and every value related to the lung capacities and the lung volumes. So, quite important from your physiology related to respiratory system. Next, quite important is the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, wherein you need to have good idea of the Bohr effect and the Haldane effect. So, oxygen dissociation curve is a sigmoid shape. So, if there is hypoxia, okay, so this will be slightly shifting to the right. Okay, so if there is more of carbon dioxide and if there is hypoxia, so it shifts to right. So, that is being explained by the Bohr effect, and Haldane effect will be like a straight line like this. Okay, so it is quite important the differences, and every related to oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve and the Haldane effect. So, both Bohr and Haldane effect, and also if possible the chloride shift, all these are quite important related to the physiology. Do have a look and do give a glance there. Next again is the regulation of respiration. So, many times I have asked where is pneumotaxic center located, where is apneustic center. So, they are located within the pons, and within the medulla is the dorsal group neurons and the ventral group neurons. So, quite important the regulation of respiration. So, these three, the capacities, the dissociation curves and the regulation of respiration, I feel is quite important for your respiratory system. So, medicine point of view, the bronchial asthma, the COPD is quite important. So, bronchial asthma, you can see the symptoms like shortness of breath, wheezing, difficulty breathing, cough and anxiety. So, the signs are also given here. So, just note them out. So, they can ask like how the question can be asked related to bronchial asthma. They will give you the series of symptoms and signs related to that, and they can ask you to like suggest a drug. Okay, so whether it could be a long acting bronchodilator or a short acting bronchodilator. So, based on the symptoms given, you have to answer. Okay, so what drug they have asked and what you have to answer accordingly, you have to go for it. So, many times they have asked like that. Next again the COPD, which again have this chronic bronchitis and the emphysema. So, the differences between them is quite important. So, chronic bronchitis called as the blue bloaters, and emphysema the pink puffers. So, there will be pursing of lips and they will be completely pinkish. So, even that is quite important, and other important areas the pleural effusion. So, just have a look of these three in your general medicine related to respiratory system. Next the CNS. So, quite important the physiology is the functions of the respective parts of the brain. Okay, so these are the lobes with the respective functions. So, occipital lobe for vision, okay, parietal lobe for sensation, for reading and the orientation of the body. Temporal lobe is understanding the language, behavior, memory and hearing. Frontal lobe is for problem solving, emotions and reasoning, speaking and all that. Okay, so besides that the functions of the brainstem is mainly for the involuntary functions, and cerebellum is for the balance and coordination of the voluntary movements. Besides this, the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. Broca's area for language perception and Wernicke's area for language comprehension. Okay, so these two are again important. So, where they are located also quite important in the brain. So, do have a look of that as well. And again quite important, and you must be quite aware of all the cranial nerves and the respective functions of the cranial nerves. So, do have a look, and the nerve type, whether they are sensory, whether they are motor, there is a mnemonic for that as well, right. So, do note it out. Okay. Next again quite important being the pain pathway, okay, especially if it is related to dental pain. So, if you see if the pain is carried by A delta fibers, then it is quick or fast pain. Why? Because it reaches the higher center by neospinothalamic tract. So, they can ask the fast pain from the A delta fibers is being carried by, then you have to go for neospinothalamic tract, the one which is present on the outer side. So there are no interneurons present there, so that's the reason it carries quick pain. When coming to the, just a second, when coming to the one which is carried by the C fibers, okay, so here if you see, it is a paleospinothalamic tract. Okay, so C fibers carries low pain, so that is one which is present to the inner side. So if you see here, there are many interneurons present in between, right? So many interneurons are there. So that's the reason they, the C fibers via paleospinothalamic tract carry slow pain, whereas the A delta fibers carry fast pain via neospinothalamic tract. So this is quite important from your physiology regarding the pain pathway. General medicine point of view, the seizures, types and the symptoms, very important. Okay, all the seizures, the generalized and the partial seizures are clearly given here, and the symptoms are clearly given here. So many times they have asked based on the type of seizures, so do note each and every seizure type, and also they can ask you to give the drug or prescribe the drug accordingly to the type of seizures. So just note them out. Okay, so very important. So they can ask, they can give the symptoms and they can ask you to identify the seizure and the drug that you want to prescribe. Okay, so very important. Next, coming to the renal system. So renal system, formation of urine is quite important. Okay, so reabsorption and secretion. So first the filtration occurs within the glomerulus of the Bowman's capsule. So after the filtration, 99% of the filtrate is again reabsorbed back to the blood. So the reabsorption which occurs at the PCT. So if you see here, many of the substances are being reabsorbed, about 65% of water, electrolytes, bicarbonates are being reabsorbed at the PCT. Okay, and 100% of the glucose and amino acids are again reabsorbed at the PCT. And secretion, so which the arrow which is away from the nephron gives you the reabsorption, and which is towards is the secretion. Okay, so these are the secretions which occurs towards the neurons. Why there is reabsorption and secretion? In order, it is only to maintain the electrolyte balance. Okay, and next is the descending limb, wherein there will be reabsorption of water and it is not permeable to electrolytes, whereas thick ascending limb, it is not permeable to water, but it has a transporter, that is sodium dichloride potassium transporter, wherein these ions are reabsorbed. This is regarding the thick ascending limb, and this is the descending limb, which is not which is permeable to water but not permeable to electrolytes. Next, the distal convoluted tubule, wherein you have this reabsorption of these electrolytes and secretion of the potassium and the ammonium ions, okay, in order to maintain the electrolyte balance. Okay, so all this is important. And the collecting duct, very important for the acid base balance again, because they are specialized cells called as the intercalated cells, which are like type A and type B. So type A are acid secreting and type B are the base secreting cells. So they are very important for the acid base balance. So these is quite important, so just have a look of this. Okay, next is the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So the integral parts of the, that is the macula densa, the extraglomerular mesangial cells, also called as elastis, so the agranular cells, and the juxtaglomerular cells. So they have their own importance, so very important. Okay, so coming to the macula densa, so they are present close to the efferent arteriole at the end of the thick ascending limb, and the distal convoluted tubule starts at the macula densa. So they detect the sodium concentration in the fluid in the renal tubule. So they are the chemoreceptors because they detect the sodium concentration. Next, the juxtaglomerular cells or the granular cells, these are the modified smooth muscle cells which are present at the wall of the efferent arteriole, and they secrete renin, which is being stimulated by the fall in the blood pressure. So these are the mechanoreceptors. Okay, very important. And the last are the agranular cells, which are the extraglomerular cells which are present between the efferent and the efferent arterioles. So if you see, these are present between the efferent and the efferent arterioles. Next, the juxtaglomerular cells, which are the smooth muscle cells on the efferent arteriole. And the macula densa, so at the end of the thick ascending limb before entering into the distal convoluted tubule, little close to the efferent arteriole, is the macula densa. So chemoreceptors is the macula densa, and mechanoreceptors is the juxtaglomerular cells. Very, very important. Why the juxtaglomerular apparatus is quite important? Because it secretes renin, which is important for the renin-angiotensin system, right. So, whenever there is fall in BP, the renin converts angiotensinogen. Angiotensinogen is secreted by the liver and it converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. So, renin is secreted by the kidney, which converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, and angiotensin converting enzyme secreted by the lungs converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 being a potent vasoconstrictor will again regulate the blood pressure. Okay. So, that is the reason it is quite important, the renin-angiotensin system. Okay. So, rest important from your physiology are the markers. So, inulin being the gold standard marker for your GFR, that is a glomerular filtration rate. Okay. So, normal GFR is 125 ml per minute. So, inulin being the gold standard, but it is not used commonly on a bedside. Why? Because it is bulky. In fact, serum creatinine is being used to measure the GFR commonly, but it is not a gold standard. Gold standard is always inulin. Okay. But serum creatinine, because it is less bulky and it is comfortable, so it is being used on the chair side commonly. Next, coming to the general medicine point of view, main important area is a nephritic and nephrotic syndrome. So, nephrotic syndrome, there is massive proteinuria, okay, whereas nephritic syndrome, there will be hematuria and there will be red blood cell cast. Okay. So, that is a major difference, and the other differences do note it down, nephrotic versus nephritic. Okay. And other syndromes quite important related to the general medicine is a Goodpasture syndrome. So, wherein there will be a disease related to the glomerulus as well as pulmonary symptoms. So, number 1. Number 2 being the Bartter syndrome. Bartter syndrome, there is electrolyte imbalance. Okay. Bartter syndrome. Number 3 is the Wilms tumor. Wilms tumor commonly seen with the children, wherein the kids will have hypertension. So, these 3 are again quite important in your general medicine. Have a look. Next is the differences between the conjugated and unconjugated bilirubin. So, this is related to the liver. So, note the differences and the types of jaundice. So, if they want to ask a question from the liver, the questions usually are asked in and around the concept of the bilirubin and concept of the jaundice. So, have a look of this as well. Okay. So, this is regarding all the important aspects which I felt quite important for your exam. So, have a look of all these that I have discussed. Thank you.